It's fun.
न च न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभूत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेया चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहम्.
Good morning. So we are going global again with our Satsang, and we are bringing it to you live from the Lake Nona Performance Center, where we also have the Chopra MindBody Zone. We do these once every week, if possible, on Sundays. And I spend 1 week here in the Lake Nona Performance Center and the community here 1 week every month. So this is going to be a home for global satsang as well. Before I start, I should also mention that this month, September, is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And while we're talking about enlightenment and consciousness and healing and wholeness, a significant portion of humanity is so depressed that they take their lives. Suicide is the second most common cause of death in teenagers. And every 40 seconds, somebody is committing suicide in the world. Not committing, dying of suicide. It's inaccurate to say committing suicide because, it comes from desperation. And so at the Chopra Foundation, we have launched a program called neveralone.love. Check it out, neveralone.love, www.neveralone.love. We have a chatbot called PB. She's an AI, but she's engaging with hundreds of people right now, having conversations, actually thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. And she has intervened in a number of suicides. I encourage you all to go to neveralone.love, check out PV, be part of this community for mental well-being, suicide prevention, and also freedom from addiction. There's no family in the world that is not affected by one of the two: depression, suicide, addiction. And they're all related to, of course, mental distress. So mental well-being is the number one thing we should all be addressing. And this is what we do in these satsangs as well. But we do it from a consciousness perspective. And we're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper as we pursue these, while at the same time not forgetting there are many people in the world who are going through such emotional distress that they either succumb to addiction or die of suicide. Okay, so today my talk is going to be, I don't plan these, so forgive me if they come as little disjointed. I was thinking what we should talk about this morning, and we're talking about everything we do is about healing. As you know, the word healing comes from the word wholeness. So healing is a return to the memory of wholeness. What does that mean actually? That means that your physical body, your mind, your awareness, your perceptions of the world, your experience of the world is a unified activity of wholeness. Wholeness means everything from microcosm to macrocosm. Okay, so think about this. The physical body is a remarkable thing. Let's just think about the human body. You start your journey or experience of the human body as a fertilized egg and 25,000 genes. And this egg multiplies 50 times, so one becomes two. 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. Within 50 replications, there's about 50, no one knows the exact number, but 50 plus trillion cells that make up a baby. That's more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Just 50 times one cell multiplying. So it becomes eyes, nose, brain, fingernails, hair follicles, genitalia, liver, kidney, spleen, brain, all of that. Just 25 replications. And so this process in science is referred to as morphogenesis and differentiation. Morphogenesis means to give rise to form, because the single fertilized is just a double alphabet of life, ATCG, genes, combination of ACTG, and genes make proteins, and then after it, life takes over, and everything happens spontaneously. And everything is happening spontaneously in your body right now. The only thing you can do is interfere with it. Okay. What are you doing right now to regulate your blood pressure, or your heart rate, or your immune system, or your endocrine system? Nothing. Okay. Even from day one, you did nothing. And that's because there's wholeness. Everything is a unified process in a single whole activity. And we call that the universe. Universe means one song, one symphony. And so what is the human body? It's part of the symphony. What's the mind? Also part of the symphony. What's perception? Also part of the symphony. What's thought? Also part of the symphony. You can summarize all experiences, fluctuations of consciousness. They're called vrittis. Vrittis means fluctuations or vibrations that manifest as sensations, sense perceptions, images, feelings, and thoughts. And then humans have this ability to give a storyline to this combination of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. Once we give a storyline to it, we actually construct the experience of our body, and we also construct the experience, what we call the universe. So you as consciousness are the source of conception, perception, ideation, and governance of what we call everyday reality. Everyday reality is this, what you experience. The computer, people on watching this on Zoom, microphone, all this is everyday reality. But this is not fundamental reality. This is projected reality. And what is projecting it is consciousness or awareness. So as opposed to the Western mechanistic worldview, every science, every philosophy, every project starts with a fundamental assumption. These in mathematics, these are called axioms, but they're assumptions. So today's science, I'm saying today's science because science is also progressing. Today's science is based on what we call matter as the ontological primitive of the universe. What does that mean? Matter, everything begins with matter. Everything begins in the world with physical stuff. And we call that physical stuff matter. When we think something is not important, we say it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because only matter is important. Okay? Now, no one has actually proved the existence of a substance called matter. Ask any scientist. Has anyone ever proved the existence of a substance called matter? And the answer is no. We give matter as a name we give to the interpretation of human perceptual activity. Not a crocodile perceptual activity, not a butterfly's perceptual activity, not a plant's perceptual activity. They all have awareness, okay? Because they're growing, they're evolving, they react to stimuli. So what is matter? Matter is a human name for a human perceptual activity, which is constantly changing. You begin as a fertilized egg, you end up with death, all the way from fertilized egg to zygote, embryo, infant, toddler, baby, teenager, dusty death. That is what happens to what we call matter. Whether it's biological matter or this matter, ultimately it goes through what we call the laws of entropy. And so when we presume that the universe is made of matter and bodies are made of matter and biological organisms of matter, then we see that it's changing, it's impermanent, and ultimately disappears. Okay? Even the whole universe will one day disappear into what we call the heat death of absolute zero, which means entropy, dissipation of heat. So biological organisms also exchange energy through heat exchange. Everything that's hot moves towards cold and ultimately gets so cold, we call it absolute zero, to minus 273 degrees something. And that's called absolute zero, the heat death of the universe to absolute zero. And then the cycle begins again, according to current science. Okay? The universe expands, then it disintegrates. Stars and galaxies disintegrate. Stars burn themselves out. And as even they're burning, they manufacture atoms, which end up as the physical universe. That's the current scientific model. What that model doesn't explain is life. What that model doesn't explain is how do material interactions create what we call life. And now I'm going to use some words interchangeably because this is very difficult to define life. So in Western science we define life as a biological organism that undergoes entropy and also has certain attributes: reproduction, digestion, metabolism, etc. But those attributes are also very difficult to explain through material interactions. Any experience is difficult to explain. However, the scientific model works. We have technology today. We're using Zoom. So we fly in planes. We use computers. We land people on the moon. We have intergalactic space probes. So science works. But does science have an answer to healing? The answer, it doesn't. Not to total healing, not to holistic healing. Yes, acute situations, pneumonia and infections, and some types of cancer, you can treat them with pharmaceutical modalities, mostly acute interventions. When it comes to chronic disease, as I've mentioned innumerable times, less than 5% of disease is related to fully penetrant gene mutations. The rest are dependent on lifestyle. But what is life? Okay, so let's go. Current science cannot explain the emergence of life or mind or anything that we call experience, sensation, perception, interpretation of that. Science cannot explain. It's called the hard problem. And it will remain the hard problem if we assume start from bottom down. Bottom down means an up, bottom up approach. Start with molecules and atoms and force fields and gravity, and then figure out why you have thoughts, why you have emotions. Impossible. Why you have stories. That's called the hard problem. But if you reverse this, life, everything starts with life. And if you change the definition of life to consciousness, to being, to fundamental reality, to awareness, to consciousness, to what the great spiritual traditions call the formless, inconceivable, imperceivable, infinite awareness in which all things arise and subside, as modifications of awareness, then there's no problem understanding how even material interactions take place, because material interactions are the exchange of consciousness, which we metaphorically describe as information, energy, and matter. Information, energy. Those are metaphors, symbols of awareness, reality, existence, truth. Inconceivable, imperceivable, but without which there's no conception, no perception, no experience. So that hymn that you hear in the beginning, that we play every time, that's from Adi Shankara. So Adi Shankara left home when he was 4 years of age in search of truth. He he transitioned from this planet. This is about 800 AD, let's say AC, and he left this planet at the age of about 28, liberated, enlightened, and having found what we call fundamental truth as an experience. That's the hymn. So he says, I'm not the modifications of consciousness, I'm consciousness itself. And then he mentions the modifications of consciousness: mind, intellect, ego, gurus and teachers, and parents and children, and forces of nature. Everything is a modification of consciousness, and all the modifications are impermanent. They come and go. In the fact, they arise and subside instantly. As soon as they're born, as soon as a sensation is born, it dies. As soon as a thought is born, it dies. As soon as a perception is born, it dies. As soon as an idea is born, it dies, unless you hold on to it and then you spread it. It becomes a meme and then it spreads, okay? And what we call our mind is the conditioning of the cultural mind that has been happening since we learned how to communicate through language. If you didn't have A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, there wouldn't be human civilization. So what is A, B, C, D? In any language, it's a bunch of wiggles and squiggles. And it's what is 1, 2, 3? It's a bunch of circles, straight lines, and dots. With a bunch of squiggles and wiggles and a bunch of straight lines and dots and circles, we created the human universe. Language. Language doesn't describe, it constructs. What is the world without language? That's how it starts, right? What is the world without human language? So reverse. Instead of matter creating life, matter is the human construct, life, awareness, existence, truth, reality, creates symbols of reality. And this is a symbol of reality. This building is a symbol of reality. Lake Nona is a symbol of reality. Anything that you can conceive, perceive is a symbol. And what Adi Shankara is saying, I'm not the symbols, I'm the source of the symbols. But if you think about it, even the symbols are actually modifications of consciousness. And symbols change your life, right? There's a symbol red light, you stop. Symbol green light, you move. The symbols create our experience of what we call everyday reality. The symbols are human symbols that we came up with to experience this. Without the symbols, there's no thing. But the symbols themselves are modifications of reality, so they are part of reality. But they are impermanent aspects of reality. And so this is what humans are scared of: impermanence, the way to dusty death. And this is the basis of all religion. And then, people have had experiences of fundamental reality. I've mentioned that before. Jesus, Buddha, the great seers, rishis, every significant sage rishi has had experience of fundamental reality, which is going back to the source, the emergence of truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, love, compassion, joy, equanimity, loss of the fear of death, because death happens to the symbols, not to the source of the symbols. So right now, I'm speaking to a couple of quantum physicists. In fact, tomorrow I'll have an article in the San Francisco Chronicle, which is going to be published elsewhere, on the quantum mechanics of metabolism, quantum mechanics of metabolism. Because every day we eat, we breathe, we digest, we metabolize, we have sensory experience, we think thoughts, we have feelings, memories, desires, aspirations, relationships, we interact with the environment. Every day we do this. If we could do it more consciously, we would understand some things that we don't understand right now. So one of the things that sounds this paper, which we're publishing tomorrow, check it out. If you go to deepakchopra.com, you'll find it. Okay, so check it out. we're going to do a series, and I'm doing this with two quantum physicists, University of, I think, Calgary and Alberta, Canada, but very, very prominent physicists. What they're saying is the arrow of time, time never goes backwards, it only goes forwards, from past to present to future. The arrow of time and entropy, what you call entropy, disorder, the heat death of absolute zero, is a one-way street. There's no reversal. Okay. And yet, any living organism shows reversal, at least for the time being. And what is reversible is called life. So right now, even for your body to function, two things are happening. One is entropy, which means it's decaying, but then also the maintenance of life, which we call homeostasis, self-regulation. What is doing that? Okay. How does a human body think thoughts, play a piano, kill germs, remove toxins, and make a baby all at the same time? And track the movement of stars and planets, because your biological rhythms of the movement of the stars and planets. It's impossible to explain this if you think matter is fundamental. But if you think one unified consciousness in which all this is happening, no problem. Consciousness is modifying itself into modes of knowing and experience that we call mind, body, and changing universe. Okay. Maybe we can do a little short meditation at the end, if it's okay, just on this point. Okay, very short, on what is reality. Okay. So if these two physicists that I'm talking to, they say negative entropy is impossible to explain, and yet it is there. Every living organism displays both entropy and negative entropy, which is self-regulation, homeostasis, and the maintenance and creation of what is called life. But if we go the other, and what these physicists also say at the very fundamental level, it's stress that's causing it, resistance that's causing entropy. So if you had no resistance whatsoever, total flow, there would be no entropy. No resistance, no regrets, just this moment. In this moment, there's no entropy. But moment is not a moment in time. Time is a fluctuation of entropy and the arrow of time in what we call the presence of now. And now has no entropy. But how many people live only in now? Okay. We don't, right? The fluctuations of consciousness cause entropy. But if you go the other way around, if you start not from bottom up, but top down, consciousness modifying itself, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, stories, mind, intellect, ego, energy, information, physical body, physical universe, then we might have a clue on how negative entropy actually reverses the arrow of time and recycles as life. Whether you call it reincarnation or not, doesn't matter. Recycling of information, recycling of energy, recycling of matter in an awareness in which all this is a unified activity. So given this approach, what I want to do is healing at the following levels: physical, mental, emotional, ego, intellect, self-awareness, and transcendence. This is a model that comes from Ayurveda and from the yogic sciences. And it's a model that's accepted by those who understand consciousness, not by physicalists yet. But physicalists are realizing we can't explain anything. We can't explain any experience. Okay. So what is this model? And today I'm going to talk about this model in purely Ayurvedic terms, in Vedantic terms, in yogic terms. So what we call the physical body is the first layer of experience, not the first layer of existence, the first layer of... As soon as you wake up, you see a physical world. You see a physical body. Okay. This first layer of the physical world, physical body, in Sanskrit, the word of it is kosha. Kosha is a layer. Think of an onion with lots of layers. The outermost skin of the onion is the physical layer. Okay, is that clear? The outermost layer of the onion is the physical. And in Sanskrit, it's called Annamaya Kosha. Anna means food. Maya, in this case, means derived from or full of food. It's called Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha. Prana is the movement, the energy, the vital energy, resource food as your. This is the first layer. The body made of matter, energy, as metaphors. This is a material body. It has energy. I can move it. Right? What is it that moves the body? And the Sanskrit word for that is prana. And then they go on to describe many types of prana. Prana, upward movement, downward movement, you know, breath, heart, circulation, digestion, all this is prana. So pranamaya kosha, annamaya kosha is the realm of physicality, physicality. How would we heal this part of the body? Well, through food, proper food, nutrition, because it's derived from food. Today we have all the knowledge of food, how it changes the genetic information in the body, which we call the microbiome. So you can actually change your genes, 99% of your genes, just through diet. A diet that has maximum diversity of plant-based foods, a diet that is natural, is not full of steroids, antibiotics, petroleum products, inflammatory products, all kinds of things, insecticides. If your food comes from natural sources, if it has maximum diversity of plant-based foods, you will heal your body by changing your genes. And the human genes that you have, which is less than 1%, only 25,000 genes are human. The rest are it's okay, I have it. Yeah, okay. So the rest are bacterial. You can change your bacterial genes and you can, through food, through diet. And then you can change your human genes, their expression. You can upgrade them through changing your experiences by choosing your experiences consciously. So the physical body is healed through food and movement and self-regulation, sleep, etc., bioregulation, homeostasis. That's what the physical body is doing all the time. The food body. But then there's the energy body, the prana body. And for that, in yogic traditions, we have hundreds of techniques called pranayama. You can slow the breath down. In fact, the slower and deeper you breathe, the longer you'll live. Ayurveda counts life not in the number of years, but in the number of breaths. Okay, and the depth of breathing. So pranayama and food and movement is healing the physical body of matter and energy. Now let's go a little deeper to the source. The next body is what we call the mental body. It's called Mano Maya Kosha. Mano is the Sanskrit word for mind. So mind has its own body. It's also called subtle body. You can't see it, but you experience it. How do you experience it? As your thoughts, as your feelings, as your emotions, and you know it's real, right? So how do you use and heal the mental body, which is mostly the emotional? Right now I'm talking only about the emotional body, and that is through relationship, through the mirror of relationship, because all emotions are through the mirror of relationship. And the more you can feel connected in relationship, through empathy, through compassion, through love, through kindness, through joy, through equanimity, the more the emotional body will heal. And for that, in yogic tradition, and I spoke about it before, we'll speak about it again, are the first two principles of yoga called yama and niyama. So today's language, we will translate niyama and yama as social and emotional intelligence. Okay? So that's how we use, through the yamas and niyamas, emotional and social intelligence, we heal the emotional mental body. What's beyond the mental body? Prior to the mental body is, right now, mental body, I'm saying emotions. So prior to that, or more fundamental to that, is the body that we call intellect. Okay. The intellect is a different experience, right? It's thoughts are trying to figure out through reflection what's going on. And the more consciously we speak, okay, the more consciously we choose experience. Is this good? Is this bad? Am I going to use a vulgar word or am I going to use a holy word? These are choices we make in every moment. And the more consciously we use speech and reflection, we heal what we call the body of the intellect. There's a word, by the way, in Sanskrit. It's called pragya aparad. Pragya aparad means the mistake of the intellect. And what is the mistake of the intellect? The intellect says, I'm separate from you, I'm separate from the universe. And this is the cause of what we call subject object split, which causes all the distress in the world. Because the subject and the object are a unified experience in the wholeness of existence. So, intellect and the mistake of the intellect is conquered through reflection. We'll do a little bit of that reflection today at the end of this program. Okay, a little bit, give you a little insight. So then we heal the mistakes of the intellect. Then we go a little further. Who is making these mistakes of the intellect? What is making the mistake of the intellect? It's the ego identity that we have. What is the ego identity? Well, if you want to know what the ego identity is, just go on LinkedIn. That's your ego identity. It's your bio. Okay, it's all the things that you associate with, all the stories, and they're very selective. Select this as me and select not this as me. Okay, the stories we favor in our consciousness. And if you close your eyes right now, you'll hear a story, and somebody is speaking to themselves. Who is this person? What is it, that never shuts up? All you have to do is close your eyes and you hear the stories, some good, some bad. So these stories are what are called karma in Eastern wisdom traditions. Karma is past experiences and how we interpreted them. And the physical body is the projection of the karmic body, the storyline. Karma, memory, desire. How do we heal that? Well, by observing the ego. Am I seeking validation? Do I need approval? Am I influenced by criticism or flattery? Am I living in fear? Do I have anger? Do I have resentments? Well, that's my ego identity, which is slowly evolving too, expanding. And you need to have an ego identity to have a physical body. Without an ego identity, there's no experience of the physical body, no experience of the physical world. So ego sustains this body, but when it dominates, when it comes in the front and awareness is in the back, then entropy. Entropy, arrow of time, all the way to dusty death. How do we heal the ego? By being an observer of the ego. You don't even have to ask these questions. Am I in fear? Am I seeking validation? Am I inferior? Am I superior? Just say the ego is your self-image. What you have constructed by identifying selectively with experiences and other people's explanations of who you are. So it's not self-esteem, it's self-image. And the self-image is at the mercy of every stranger on the street. Somebody says something nice, you're happy. Somebody says something mean, you're offended for the rest of your life. So now what kind of life is that? Okay, you heal the ego body by observing it, by noticing what you're doing, and again, making conscious choices in speech, action, thought, behavior. What's beyond the ego body is what in Sanskrit is called Jiva Atma. Jiva Atma means the soul. It's not a fashionable term, soul in today's secular society, so cognitive scientists refer to this conscious agent. You're a conscious agent having a human experience. Okay, and that conscious agent, most of the time, is not conscious. It's unconscious. It's an algorithm of the cultural conditioned mind. So So it recycles. And what recycles is the software of the experiences we've chosen before: energy, information, matter, and how we identify with them. So it doesn't matter, we call it reincarnation, but the answer to entropy that life has, life continues to stay, life continues to stay, what's the word I'm looking for? It continues to stay inviolable. It's tenacious. It doesn't give up. Okay, in face of the entropy, life recycles. For every death, there's a birth. So, what is birth and death? It's fluctuations of consciousness. Birth and death happening simultaneously, all the time. So, birth is not when you were born. Birth is sensations, images, feelings, thoughts projected as these images, and they're dying and being born all the time. Death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. Without birth, there's no death. Without death, there's no birth. And death is happening now. As soon as you have experience, birth and death is happening. So what is life? It's the continuum of birth and death. Life is not the opposite of death. Life is the continuum of birth and death, and life reinforces its dominance through the recycling and evolution of life. It doesn't matter what we call it. Reincarnation is kinds of a esoteric, mystical word. Just say recycling and evolution. Everything is recycling and evolving and going back towards its source. And so we do this becoming self-aware. Okay. This is how we heal this, through self-awareness, which means ego is not dominating, sense of self. What is sense of self? Very difficult to describe. It's also called awareness of awareness. So right now, as you're listening to me, just turn your attention to that which is listening. That still presence is the self. That's not in time. It was there when you were a baby. It's there now. It's always there. It's not in time, so it's not subject to birth and death. So by cultivating the sense of self, we heal Jivatma, the wounded soul. We are all shattered pieces of one spirit. And then finally, what is called liberation or enlightenment is we transcend all this. This is how healing occurs at every level: physical, energy, mental, emotional, at the level of intellect, at the level of ego, at the level of the wounded soul, and ultimately transcendence, which is wholeness and healing, return to our source. T.S. Eliot, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of our exploring is to arrive where we started from and know the place for the first time. So when a baby is born, it's already enlightened, but it doesn't know. It's just having a good time. Laughs, smiles, giggles, is happy, unless it's wet or unless it's hungry. And it says, "Ah!" And if the mother responds immediately with attention, affection, appreciation, gratitude, and acceptance, the baby is already healed. But that's a healing, they say, enlightenment, without knowing that you're healed, state of innocence. And ultimate healing is the return to that same state of innocence, but being aware of it. Okay, aware of it. Ultimate self-awareness is healing. So this is a bit of a template. I know I've gone on for 45 minutes, so maybe I can answer some questions. And they're coming from all over the world, so I'll answer them. Some not exactly pertinent, but this week we're generating more questions that will come in next time. So first question here from somebody called Fizzy Wig. In the heart chakra, is the heart chakra the same as the heart that Ramana Maharishi talked about? So just For 1 second, what are chakras? Chakras are metaphors of junction points between consciousness and this physical world. And there are 7 of these in Sanskrit. The first chakra only has to do with survival. The second chakra has to do with sensual experience. The third chakra with transformation. And the fourth chakra, which is the heart chakra, is love, compassion, joy, equanimity, gratitude, connection to the world. So the answer to Fizzy Wig is yes, sir. The heart chakra that Ramana Maharishi is talking about is what we are talking about right now. Healing this is healing your emotions and your connection to life and being. Second question, Amanda Wolf. Does yoga raise your level of consciousness? I find my oneness with nature, uh, cooking, and creating, but wonder if a greater transformation would occur with yoga. Yes, yoga means union with the source. The word is, yoga word is related to the English word yoke. When Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, that's yoga. And last time I think we spoke about the 8 limbs of yoga that take you all the way. But yes, cooking, walking in nature, and everything you're doing, including music and poetry and dance and movement, anything that unifies mind body as a unified experience is helping you get to the source of all experience, which is consciousness. Jacqueline Noguera, very interesting question. Is poverty a projection? Is poverty, if the reality is abundance, then why is poverty such a great issue in the entire world? Yes, what is poverty is the recycling of the ecosystem of the cultural mind that is embedded in recycling of poverty. Okay. So you're born in a gutter in Bangladesh. You say, what did I do? Well, it's not you, it's the cultural karma that is recycling there. And the only way to heal that poverty is to raise consciousness. Okay. And to abundance consciousness. And that is the only way. It's not just money, not just charity. If you give charity, which is good to alleviate somebody, you send a child to school, education. In fact, in India, there's a program right now called Akshay Patra, where they offer food to children who can't eat, have families that don't have enough income to eat. So the kids go to these schools because they can get a meal and they get an education as a result. Now, that is real charity. But giving away money actually perpetuates the poverty without really going to the root cause of poverty, which is the cultural conditioned recycled mind. Okay, so education, raising awareness, these are huge issues that can be solved if we have enough compassion. That's why our foundation mantra is love in action. Love in action will remove poverty. Action without love is meaningless. Love without action is irrelevant. But if we collectively embark on this, this is one of the things also Never Alone is involved in. Kishore Patani, have you had any mystical experience? The only experience that's real is mystical. Everything else is not an experience, it's a projection. So, yes, of course. Otherwise, why would I talk about it? Eric Snyder, from the seat of consciousness, are harmful things actually happening? Everything harming itself for some reason. So, now, see, this is a very interesting question. If God is benevolent, then why is there so much suffering in the world? If the source of all experiences is all moving in the direction of healing. See, don't think of God as a person, and don't think of yourself as a person, because the person itself is a projection. Okay. And when we say God, we say person. You know, some dead white male or some maybe other color. China may be yellow, okay. But usually male. Some societies matriarchal. If you think of God in that way, then there's no solution. But if you think of God as infinite awareness, formless, then infinite experiences by contrast. You can't have an up without a down. You can't have a hot without a cold. You can't have entropy without life. You can't have, so, even the arrow of time is reversible through the recycling of life. So every experience is by contrast, and awareness transcends all contrasts. So there is creation, there is sustenance, there's destruction, there's incubation, and there's resurrection. These are called the five faces of Shiva. That hymn that you heard was indicating that. Okay, five faces of Shiva. Shiva being always says Shivoham. I am Shiva. What is Shiva? Pure consciousness, modifying itself into infinite experiences. Good, bad, indifferent depends on where you are in your evolution. So, without knowing what we call bad, we wouldn't know what is good. Just like without knowing pain, we wouldn't know what pleasure is. Or without knowing what heat is, we wouldn't know what cold is. Or what up is, down is. What death is, what birth is. All experiences by contrast. And the universe being the projection of an infinite formless. How do we know it's infinite? It has no form. If you could see it, then it's not infinite. Only the invisible is infinite. The space is infinite. If you take away all the objects from the space, even the space disappears. All that's left is formlessness, which is inconceivable.
Let's take questions from the audience. Then we will take this next week. There are too many questions.
Okay.
Let's take audience.
Okay, so that's a good idea. Panancha is saying there are lots of questions. You don't want to spend all the time on online questions. If anyone has questions here, we'll give you the mic and we'll do the remaining satsang with your questions. Yes, give her a mic. Can you give her?
Speak up.
Okay, I'll speak out.
Either way. Let's hear your name.
My name is Victoria.
And not you. It's not you, it's your name. Remember.
Oh yeah, totally. I am.
Yes.
But my question is in regards to vibrations and electromagnetics, and I'm just curious about some experiences I've had. Is that when I find myself in flow, those around me, even if a moment ago seemed like they were in chaos, all of a sudden feel in flow as well. And mainly with family members, I've found that all of a sudden we all just like can sync if we're all open to it. But it's been this really interesting experience of feeling like the person right in front of me directly mirrors it. And I'm just curious, I don't know if it's vibration or electromagnetic, that's what I've been using.
Okay, so the question, it's a very good question. We're surrounded by electromagnetic fields, which are fields of energy and information. And our own body is an expression of that. So our own body is influenced by these electromagnetic fields, which include 5G, and it also includes angry people and upset people, because every experience influences the field. We are part of the field. And right now we're talking electromagnetic field, which is a metaphor for energy fields. Okay. Electromagnetic fields, strong and weak interactions, and gravity are the most important forces in the physical universe. Are we influenced by them? Yes. Do they cause entropy? Yes. If you are with negative people, do they influence us? Yes. Okay, so the cultural environment influences us, and now technology influences us. But there's a principle in evolution. If we don't adapt to it, we become extinct, because there's no way we can stop it. Try stopping being around negative people. You can do your best, choose your friends, but there'll always be a negative relative or mother or father or son or whatever. So you do your best to be in the best environment. 5G and all this, you put in the electrical, there'll be technologies even to block that. But the most important way to prevent that from happening is go back to your sense of self. Okay, let that dominate. So let not the experience dominate, let the sense of self, which is that still presence in you. And that still presence is a very loving, nurturing presence. Doesn't have to do anything. That heals the environment. So they say in the yogic tradition, the presence of loving presence, all beings around you start to heal. So you're not affected by them, you affect them through your sense of self. Presence, nothing to say, nothing to do, just be present.
Any other questions, or should we go to
Yeah, there's one more question.
I'd like to speak, if you could speak to the field of infinite pure potential, right? And I want to, there's this, let's call it the cultural conditioned veil that we may be conditioned by. So this veil that's in front of us sometimes. For you to have access to the field of infinite potential, you need what? Belief, and it's there, right? Like if you believe in the field of infinite potential, the door is wide open. You step through, and the field is infinite. You can create, you are, you feel the flow, the oneness. But if the veil is there and the door isn't open because you simply can't believe it. What I experienced from teaching, from coaching, things like that, is that there's a thick veil of belief. And the belief comes from the stories, the narratives, right? The perception in which they created, and like breaking down that veil to open the door of infinite potential. You want to have access to it fully, you have to fully believe in it, and it's this belief system that we're trying to reconstruct. So my question is, when you wrote your entire journey and the collection of all of the experiences and the wisdom that you have to help people understand, to melt this veil that the belief system is.
Okay, so question is, how do we get rid of the veil of ignorance, which is giving us the experience of a disjointed, unintegrated experience of life? How do we get rid of the veil of ignorance? The veil of ignorance, by the way, is responsible for this experience. So don't discount it altogether. Okay, the veil of ignorance is called Maya. It's called Maya Shakti. Maya is the goddess, and she puts a veil. The goddess puts a veil to hide the beauty of infinite potential, so she can play a trick on you. Maya is the trickster goddess, okay? And then we play in that veil of ignorance as fictional characters in a collective dreamscape, and the word for that is Leela, the play of existence. So as long as you're engaged in this world, you play Leela, like characters on a stage. You understand that this is a veil of ignorance. Okay, you're not a social activist angry about it. But you also know, the first thing is know, the veil of ignorance. Now, it's very interesting. The question she asked is a very interesting question. In every tradition in the world, there is something called the fall from grace. Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve are naked. That's naked truth. The serpent says, eat the fruit of the tree of good and evil, human construct. Okay? As soon as they do that, they become demigods. But they also create the veil of ignorance. Because God herself created the universe through the veil of ignorance. So human beings, because we have free will and we can make conscious choices, this is the mistake of the intellect. Me and the world, subject and object. Without that, we wouldn't have human civilization. Without that, we wouldn't have technology or science. We wouldn't have VR. We wouldn't have Zoom, anything like that, what we have created, because we are gods in embryo. And removing the veil of ignorance is realizing that the embryo has infinite potential as the source, God itself as the source. So the fall of grace is a very interesting phenomenon. It led to human civilization. It led to suffering. It led to mechanisms of death. It led to radical technologies for suffering. But those technologies can also be used for healing. The choice is ours. We're not gods, but we're gods in embryo. When you become God, to know God is to become God. But know God not intellectually, Because God cannot, if you can describe God, conceive God, perceive God, it's not God. Because it's not infinite. Only the imperceivable and the formless is imperceivable. The more you anchor your identity there, you will make the right choices and even use the veil of ignorance for healing. So with that, I think we'll stop now. Listen to this hymn when he says, oh, meditation. So just sit we just do a little inquiry and the answer will be obvious to you, okay? Close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. Bring your awareness in your heart. We ask this question a lot in our meditations, who am I? Today, don't ask that question, ask yourself, what am I? Who am I implies a person. What am I? And now ask yourself, what is it that wants to know the answer to this question, what am I? Am I the changing body, or am I the awareness in which the changing body is an impermanent and fluctuating experience? Am I the changing body, or am I the awareness in which what I call the changing body, a fluctuating, changing, impermanent experience? Don't try to answer the question, it'll come to you. Next question, am I my emotions, or am I the awareness in which the emotions are a changing experience? Am I my thoughts, or am I the awareness in which thoughts come and go? Am I any perception, or am I the awareness in which perceptions come and go? Am I a person, or am I the awareness in which I identify changing experiences as a process called a person? These reflections will convince you that there's no such thing as a person. The whole problem is identifying with a person and then trying to validate that person. And it's a fictional character to begin with. Am I a person, or am I the awareness in which the person is a changing process? Stay with that thought for today. You can open your eyes anytime you are concerned or worried, ask yourself, who is worried? And you'll see it's that which you call person. You're thinking about yourself. That person, which is a changing process, in the real you, which is not in time, which is timeless. Awareness stays a constant. Everything else is in time. If you pay attention just to that one process, every time you're anxious, ask yourself, who is anxious? What is anxious? Realize awareness is never anxious. Awareness just watches. The person is anxious, but the person doesn't exist. It's a process. So that's today's meditation. Play the hymn. The hymn says exactly what we did discuss. I'm not these changing experiences. I'm the source. Now listen to it. When he says Shivoham, he returns to the source. Shivoham is not a person yet, not a God. The field of awareness. I am awareness. Everything is modified awareness.
न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न च प्राणिसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायुः न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वा पाणिपादं न चोपस्तपायुः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवो